One of the biggest shockers of the 2026 World Cup was served very early. When it was confirmed that Germany would face Paraguay in the round of 32, everyone thought it was going to be an easy game for the Europeans, especially because Paraguay were humiliated 4-1 by the USA in their opening game of the tournament. But the South Americans ended up sending them packing. What this means is that Germany have now failed to reach the round of 16 of the World Cup in 12 years. For one of the most successful teams in the history of the competition, this is something of a disaster. For real, this downfall of German football needs to be talked about. Hey fam, this is your chance to build the jersey collection you've been waiting for. The Goal 90 bundle deal is live. Buy 2 jerseys and get 10% off. Buy 3 and get 15% off. Buy 4 and get a massive 25% off. Club kits, country kits, retro classics, pick your favorites and save big. And yes, every order comes with free worldwide shipping. The deal runs only until the end of May. Goal 90 bundle deal. Buy more, save more. Shop now at Goal 90 Shop. You see, Germany is World Cup royalty. They have won the World Cup 4 times. Only Brazil have won it more times. They've also made it to the World Cup proper more times than any other nation barring Brazil. And they have dominated this competition for decades. They've had a podium finish at 12 different World Cup editions, 3 more times than any other nation. In fact, coming into this World Cup, Germany were the only nation to have had a podium finish at least once in every decade that the World Cup was held since its inception. They finished 3rd in 1934. The World Cup wasn't held throughout the 1940s. They then won their first title in 1954, finished 2nd in 1966, won it again in 1974, finished as runners-up in 1982 and 1986, won their 3rd trophy in 1990, finished 2nd and 3rd in 2002 and 2006 respectively, and of course won their 4th star in 2014. But following this exit at the hands of Paraguay, that streak has finally come to an end. With the next World Cup coming in 2030, it means that they end the 2020s without a podium finish. This alone shows the progressive decline in German football through the years. But it gets even worse when you probe more deeply. You see, since the turn of the century, Germany's been one of the scariest teams in international football. They got to the final of the 2002 World Cup and finished 3rd in the 2006 and 2010 editions. Mind you, they also got to the final of the Euros in 2008 and reached the semis in 2012. At this point, they had not won the Euros since 1996 and had not won the World Cup since 1990. So, going into the 2014 World Cup, they had been 18 years without a major trophy and 24 years without the World Cup. The pressure was insane, but they went on to put on a show. At that time, no nation from a different continent had ever won the World Cup on South American soil. But Germany was so scary that you just could not write them off in Brazil. In fact, they memorably humiliated the hosts 7-1 and then went on to rain on Lionel Messi's parade in the final. And it had been coming. Germany had been knocking and coming close in previous years, and it was only a matter of time before they finally won it again. The domestic league was growing in prominence and they were producing a lot of young players at a very high rate. At the 2010 World Cup, they failed to get to the final, but they had players who actually dominated. A young Thomas Müller announced himself to the world in that tournament, winning the Golden Boot and Young Player of the Tournament awards. He was then named in FIFA's All-Star Team of the tournament, along with Philipp Lahm and Manuel Neuer. It was obvious that they were cooking, and in 2014, they finally arrived. They had been preparing for that one moment for over a decade, and when it came, they were not going to let anything take it away from them, not even the greatest player ever. But that was where the problem was, you see. After they finally got their hands on that elusive trophy after 24 years, they felt fulfilled and rested on their laurels a little bit, which is not a very uncommon theme when it comes to this competition. There's a reason the World Cup winner's curse became a thing. Many teams win the title and then become so relaxed going into the next tournament that they get shocked. So when the Germans failed to get out of their group at the 2018 World Cup, many weren't very surprised. This curse had taken down Spain 4 years prior and France 8 years before that. So even though it was a shock at the time, it was quite easy to explain. The real problem emerged when they also failed to get out of their group at the 2022 World Cup after winning just one of their 3 group games. It forced the nation to look inward at the problems with the national team. Players were aging. Joachim Low, who won the 2014 tournament, had left, and his replacement, Hansi Flick, appeared to be not very suited for international football. They responded to this by sacking Flick, the first time Germany had ever sacked a coach in their history. They also tried to be more inventive and get with the times, and they aimed to achieve that by hiring a much younger coach with more modern ideas, Julian Nagelsmann. But it appears that that wasn't the solution. It's looking like Nagelsmann is another idealist whose philosophy doesn't translate well to international football. They got knocked out in the quarter-final of the 2024 Euros on home soil, and that forced massive changes all around. Manuel Neuer, Thomas Müller and Ilkay Gundogan all announced their retirement from international football after that tournament, while Toni Kroos said goodbye to professional football as a whole. This was supposed to usher in a new era in German football, but Nagelsmann failed to tap into that. Instead, he still chose to rely heavily on the old guard for his World Cup. 8 of his 26-man squad were players over the age of 30, while 4 others were on the brink of turning 30. Then, of course, he went and recalled the 40-year-old Manuel Neuer out of retirement. He did all of this while leaving out young players like Karim Adeyemi, Noah Atubolu, Kevin Schade, Saeed El Mala and Tom Bischoff. Even before the World Cup kicked off, some fans lamented about this. Following the exodus of the big legends in 2024, Germans were expecting a new era of football, especially with a coach under the age of 40. But the 2026 World Cup felt like a return to dependence on the senior citizens. But apart from that, it feels like Germany has lost its identity. Through the years, we've gotten used to seeing Germany play ultra-attacking and very direct football on the biggest stages. But over the last 10 years, we just simply have not seen that. They're no longer scary. Perhaps it comes down to them hiring idealistic coaches who prioritize too much structure over freedom. Or it could just be that Germany doesn't produce as many top stars as it used to. I mean, look at the 2014 World Cup squad. They had Müller, Klose, Özil, Kroos, Podolski, Götze, Draxler and Schürrle. These were players who were at the top of their game and could absolutely hurt you in just a blink of an eye. And one interesting thing is that most of those guys were young and in their prime. That Germany squad had just 3 players who were over the age of 30, and those were Weidenfeller, the backup goalkeeper, Klose, the nation's record goalscorer, and Lahm, the team captain. The team was mostly young, fresh and energetic, which is something that has been missing since that tournament. Like we said, Germany came into this tournament with 8 players over the age of 30 and 1 40-year-old. It felt like they were refusing to move on from the old guard. For contrast, look at France. After they won the World Cup in 2018, they went into the 2022 World Cup to defend their crown with a vastly fresher squad. The midfield in particular saw a massive change. Camavinga, Tchouaméni and Rabiot had risen to replace the old guard of Kanté, Pogba and Matuidi. This allowed France to make another run to the World Cup final with a group of young players with fresh hunger and more motivation. It might interest you to know that the French squad had only 4 players over the age of 30 and 2 of them were goalkeepers. Basically, we think that Germany have massively failed to keep the national team fresh and motivated, and that has led to their recent failures. Failing to reach the round of 16 of the World Cup in 3 straight tournaments is a massive stain on Germany's pedigree, and they must now look inward and do a massive overhaul. Now, does that overhaul start with sacking Julian Nagelsmann and maybe replacing him with someone like Jurgen Klopp? What do you guys think? Tell us in the comments. Also, tell us what you think the biggest problem with German football is right now. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Also, turn on the bell notification so that you never miss out on new content. Catch you in the next one. Bye.